Okay. So what I have is my lending controller as conversational scope, and you can see already it's a wizard with lots of things going on there. I have my check and start and check and end and recalculating something. So this is an instant lending application, and I will actually, so this is called instant JSF, instant secure lending. It's I wonder if I need something else here. So not groove sharp. So let me stop all of this and grab that one. And the reason why I need it is because I'm going to type push my way through the entire form. So I want to apply to the Java bank and the instant secure lending. There's a lot of debug. I've tried to make it a bit responsive in that sort of vein. Still work in progress there. So this is a banking application. So you've got your application, your eligibility, you're happy to continue. And I will hit my little button here to go into cheat mode. This is called Form Filler in Chrome, very useful. And it filled in all my details. And I'm printing out details here like the lending controller, the conversation, and if it's transient or long running at the moment. So I hit submit, and you can see there's a breadcrumb at the top. And I'm using HTML5 support and Ajax to actually change things like the how much I want to borrow. I can change the term, and the payment, monthly payment calculation is telling me how much I'm willing to borrow on. So if I hit submit, I will then enter my house number, name and address, and I can then agree with all the terms, hit next, and I have finished that conversation, and I'm beginning to, I can start all over. So that this is essentially conversation scope example. What else? If we go back to IntelliJ. So there are a few things in this application that I built. Let's see. Not that one. So things like to do with validation, email validation, date of birth, the validator, and which validates on your date of birth. And this is quite interesting because this is a site that I worked on, a famous site. Didn't want to use any date or drop down or sort of easy date pickers, and that was part of their UX model. So how would you model that in JSF? Well, let me use the other one. If I apply now, forget me. And do the rest. So with you've got the Ajax validation in this example. I call this the smart example. So if you choose things that are totally stupid, then yeah, you get messages like you must be 18 years old, and of course it's the reason why they wanted a non-date picker version came out of user testing. So there you go. And this is example of how to write a component that bundled together forms one value in your backing bean or in your data module. So I'm using a design pattern called the boundary control entity pattern, where I've separated everything into.
In the boundary, what do you? It's an EJB in the boundary.
Yeah.
It's an EJB.
What?
It's an EJB. Enterprise JavaEE.
Oh yes, it's a stateful session Java Bean, and it has the entity manager. Yes, so it's doing the persistence, and your inside entities are, I guess, your entities as addresses, the applicant, which is a whole bunch of.
Where do you put the faces managed bean faces? It's in a different folder. How do you structure your?
Oh yes, how do I structure it? So I tend to put things that are touching the boundaries, going into a database or going somewhere else into the boundary folder. So obviously controls classes to do with faces, like and the beans, and of course entity is where your entity beans are, where your data structure and data module beans, and then you've got extra things around it like utility. So utility is an application scoped bean, which means I can inject that into any of my components, and all it does at the moment is have this lone weight bounds, and also performs the calculation. Okay, so that was one. Any more questions on that? Any more questions on conversation scope? Smart navigation. Okay, smart navigation is that a component? Yes, it is a kind of a composite component in Faces. So what that does, it with another bean allows you to go back and edit your user details. So once you have, and this is what I said, once you've navigated through the application, and so if I change that to something like 1988, and I go through it a number of times, you'll notice that at the top that the actual breadcrumbs and the section headers are changing, and I can go back to the start and edit details. So that's what that component does, really. So I can change the title of the person and change their address. Let me go through that. So this is a new application. So you notice this is a different conversation ID. So it's actually ID number 2. That's interesting. And then I agree with the terms, submit, and finish. So I will stop that one. Oops. And I've killed off my Chrome. Stop. So, do I have the faces? So I'm running all my my code against GlassFish, so which means it will work on Payara. Close all. So this is a faces flow. Is this the right one? Let me see, it will probably... Okay, so what's happened? There is no... okay. So why is that failed? I think this is failed because I need to change the web XML somewhere. This is a frustration problem between GlassFish and Wildfly. Is this the reason? Yeah. Okay, it seems that you have to have two different mappings for the JaxOS. Let's see if that works. If that's the reason why I'll restart the server. Are we here now? If not, connected to the server. Nope, that's not the reason. Invalid. Yeah. Okay, so that didn't work. Let's see. And let me undo this one. And let's try a different application server. It may be that this is the last time I was working with it. So that I changed something. Anyway, that seems to be busted. I'm busted. Right, let's try something else. Maybe that one is broken. Try the first example. Oh, okay. So here we are. The first example, faces flow. Is there a lot to fill in? No, I don't think there is. Okay, so in I'll go away. There's a picture of James Gosling. So if you go to Faces, the simple workflow, you can enter your password. I think I may have protected the flow. So you in Faces flow, you can go to all of the pages in the flow. If you come out the flow, okay, that button I've actually written. This button will not work when the user's in the flow, and I've still clicked on it. So, but if you click Go Home, you are outside the flow. If I go back into the flow, you're back to the start, and therefore you've got a new object. So go out again, and you go back into the flow. It's gone. And so conversation doesn't work like that. Conversation will be retained after you've begun it, until you've actually ended it. So that's the benefit of flow. You get an internal error. Okay, that's good. Attempting to go into the flow gives you those errors. Okay. Okay, the conclusion. Going digital with JavaEE is perfectly feasible, at least I think it is. And I've been working with it a lot with clients who are using JavaEE today. They're actually using Wildfly and not so much GlassFish yet. It depends what your business wants to do, of course, and how much you need to do. So GlassFish, Wildfly, all these tools allow you to have transactions, concurrency persistence, and yes, if you want to do microservices, you perfectly can do it with an enterprise application server if you want. And you get all the benefits of a standard. And yeah, JavaEE 7 is definitely helpful in getting that fast turnaround development process. It depends what you want to do. The battle is no longer about lightweight versus heavyweight. I mean, that argument is gone out the water with things like Docker or Chef and Puppet, where people will just spring up servers and then shut them down. So it depends on what your workload is, and it's about your developers. It's about maintainability and trainability, getting people to learn what the technology that you're using. So if you stay with Java and the JVM, you're always going to be able to find people who already know the technology. If you go to something obscure, then your mileage may vary. And of course, that isn't to say that JavaEE 7 is the best. If you look at things like Play Framework and the way you can change code and automatically do a refresh in the browser and the code is already operational and running, that is a really fast agile cycle. And Java has some ways to catch up. I do wish there were more standard ways to go containerless. But if you work with, as I do with IntelliJ or Clips or whatever, NetBeans, and you can get really fast productive environments in writing code. And the final slide, seriously look at faceless flows, because I think they are really the underrated stars of JSF 2.2. They are so basic, it's easy to just miss them. There are other frameworks out there like Webflows and Spring Integration that do a lot more workflow for you, like have XML to pass in parameters and they come close to business process management orchestration. And I just think maybe there's an opportunity there for what a guy like Craig McClanahan did when there was nothing but JSP. And what everybody started doing was writing spaghetti pojos and JSP that bundled the presentation logic in with the business logic and vice versa, and made a load of spaghetti code. So I think there's an opportunity for some framework that will build on this faceless flow idea. And yes, keep an eye on MVC1 and JAX-RS, because if you want to do things like AngularJS and single-page applications, that's also a way of connecting up with the JavaScript kids and newbies who are pushing that. So everybody knows there's a JavaScript framework invented every minute. So your mileage is going to vary there, and people may say, hey, JavaScript is the best, Node.js is the best, but Java keeps chugging along very sweetly. It's got this long-term scalability and dependability about it. And we just have to keep the guys honest, look, and tell them, look, these are what the guys doing. If you want Java to stay relevant, just send a message to Oracle. These are what the digital guys are doing. This is what the really nice people, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, are doing with the technology. And we did it with JavaEE before. We told them that this is the wrong way in J2EE to build applications, and they then introduced Hibernate and Toplink, brought them all together and chucked away the old EJB spec. And yes, it can happen if with community. So thank you very much. Thank you for attending my talk. And if you got any questions, then I'm here. Let's have some food.